But let me take a few examples then from different cultures then here. The Arabs, for example, if we're going to speak about them, the Muslims, there's endless stories. I remember one year we had a guy who came up after the lesson, after I'd been speaking about this, and he said this. He told me his story. He was from a Muslim background, and he had become saved, and his whole family he just had to break contact with because he became saved, became Christian, because they were so covenant mindset that you've heard about these honor killings. That's all covenant mindset. For example, in the Balkan states, there's this with the honor that if someone in your family gets killed, then you must punish. This whole way of thinking, it has to do with covenants. But Islam, I almost want to say, it wouldn't have been as dangerous if it wasn't that they were covenant mindset. I mean, take Salman Rushdie. When he wrote this book, he had the whole Islamic world turned against him. Because in this covenant way of thinking, there's this thinking that you mess with me, you mess with all my people. You following? So, you mess with me, you're not just messing with me, you're messing with everybody I'm in covenant with. All these people. That's the way of thinking. I remember one time when we lived in Masai, and we were living in Norok, a city in Masai, and we were going home from Nairobi into Masai. We'd been shopping there in the main city. And we're meeting buses on the road. Bus loads. Big buses, just completely packed. Packed. The Swedish word for packed, that means there is no more room. And when I say packed, I don't mean, like Swedish bus where you have to have at least 3 centimeters in between the next person and you. Preferably you don't even want to smell the other person's breath. I mean, it was packed on these buses. So I remember one time I had to ride the Matato, the bus, the small buses out there. And Matato comes from Matat, which means dangerous. And I pressed into this bus and I sat down, and then finally another person came in and sat down, and then a very large woman gets on the bus who came all the way back and wanted to sit in my lap. And then I was like, no! It's full! I said. And then the man sitting next to me looked at me. It wasn't very cold, so, we're pouring sweat. And he said, if there's space to sweat, there's space for more. So when I'm talking packed buses, I mean packed buses. And in Africa, it's not unusual that people are hanging outside and on the roof, and they're all over this vehicle. And we see these buses, and bus after bus after bus, just passing us. And on these buses are Maasai. I don't know if you know what a Maasai is, but they're tall. They have red robes on them, and they got spears. They're warriors. They live by their traditions. And we saw they had spears and machetes and bows and arrows and all this. And we thought, what is this? I mean, are they going to a festival or something? Because it's not so usual that they're always walking around with their spears. They do dress normal occasionally. But then we counted maybe 10 or 12 buses. And then the morning after, we read in the newspaper, and there's a minister in the parliament that was Maasai. And he wasn't a nice guy at all. He was actually a real crook. But he was the Minister of Lands. So he had been accused of corruption. So there was to be a trial in the High Court. And we're talking Nairobi. We're not talking about little clay huts. We're talking about, skyscrapers. This is a city. Just like in the West world. Normal people, civilized. Just so you can see this before you. And so the Maasai, they don't even like this guy, this minister. But he was from Maasai background. If you mess with me, you mess with all the Maasai. So they just obeyed the covenants. They filled 40 buses. They went straight into the town, right into Nairobi. They went right up to the high court, and they stormed the high court with spears. And the military standing there, you know, because the police, they don't have, you know, batons. They got machine guns. And the police and military, no one dared do anything. So they just canceled the whole trial. Because it was better to do that than to have civil war break out. Because the people there, they know you don't mess with the Maasai. They're a warrior people, and they're feared. They're always fighting with someone. That's kind of an indirect way of saying it. They're always, you know, border fighting with other tribes. But that's how strong it was. They don't even like the guy. But they were in covenant with him.